All right, let's look at number 18, which says if the Japanese award is presented at some time before the Swahili award is presented, any of the following could be true except. So the first thing we need to notice is that they are telling us that Japanese is going to be before Swahili. So we could write it up here. This is what they told us. But we should also write it, it may be better actually to write it here because that puts it relative to the rest of the line, and it shows us that what they're doing is just adding Swahili to the end of the big line that we had already made. And so the only variable remaining to think about in terms of its placement is G. We know that G cannot go first, but after that, the G is pretty free. So the G could slip in here between the HF indeterminate block and the KL indeterminate block, or it could slip in after the KL but before the J, or it could slip in between the J and the S, or it could even be last. So the G can affect the placement of a lot of the variables, but the one placement that it will not affect is the H and the F, because the G can't go first. So no matter what, the indeterminate HF block is going to have to be first. Okay, so that we can go ahead and write in, but then everything after that is going to be affected by where we put the G. So that's the analysis. Now we need to make sure that we pay attention to the question because it says any of the following could be true except. So we're looking for the thing that's impossible, and 4 of the answer choices are going to be possible. Those are the ones we don't want. We want the one that's impossible. All right? So let's go to the answer choices. A says the German award is presented immediately before the French award is presented. German is presented immediately before the French. And that actually looks like our answer, right? Because we already said that H and F are going to have to go first and second. You know, we don't know the order, but we know that they're going to have to go first and second. So there's no room for G to go immediately before the French award. So A would be our answer. And I trust that if you look at B, C, D, and E, you're going to see that all of them are possible. We can go through them really quickly. Let's see. So it says the German award is presented immediately before the Japanese award. Yeah, we said we can slip the German award in before Japanese. The Hebrew award is presented immediately before Latin. Yeah, if we put the F first and the H second, then we can, because the KL block is indeterminate, we could put L third and K fourth. The next one says the Hebrew award is presented immediately before the Latin award. Again, we could go F, H, sorry, that's the one I just did, my bad. The Korean award is presented immediately before the Japanese award. Korean immediately before Japanese. We could do that because we could put L in third, K in fourth, then put Japanese, and then put G and S somewhere in 6 and 7. Okay, so, and then the last one says the Swahili award is presented immediately before the German award. Yeah, we can just put German in the back, right? All right, I'm moving a little quickly because I want to get this video, I want to get the next question done under the YouTube time limit in this video. So let's go to number 19. All right, so let's look at number 19. The order in which the awards are presented is completely determined if which one of the following is true. And this is a question that a lot of students have some trepidation about because they may not completely understand what we mean by what LSAT means by completely determined, and then also it's sometimes hard to figure out when things are completely determined or not. The first point is completely determined means that you know exactly where everybody's going to go. Okay, there's no wiggle room whatsoever. And so now let's go about and figure out what is it that we would have to do in this particular game in order to completely determine everybody, in order to make sure we know exactly where everybody's going to go. Well, we can look at our setup, our big line, and think of a few things that would, at least a few things that would have to be taken care of in order for us to know where everybody goes. One thing is that the H and F would have to be straightened out. We'd have to know which one's going to come first because right now we don't know that. By the same token, the K and L would have to be straightened out. We'd need to know whether the K is going to come before the L or the L is going to come before the K. Otherwise, things would not be completely determined. And then we also need to put the G and the S down, right? And we need to know exactly where they're going to go. It looks like if we can do those 4 things, then we would have a good chance of completely determining where everybody's going to go. Okay, so those are the 4 things that we need to be looking for. So let's see. A says the French award is presented immediately before the German award is presented. So if French was immediately before German, that's telling us that it's going to go HFG. Okay, and the Korean award is presented immediately before Latin. So that's telling us we have HFG as a block, and then separately the KL indeterminate block is now going to be determined, so it's going to be KL. So we would have straightened out HF and the G, and we would know that the K is going to go before the L. But that leaves us still wondering about where the S is going to go. And the S is still moving, so A can't be the answer for at least that reason. All right, what about B? The French award is presented immediately before the Hebrew award is presented. That's one part of it. The French award is presented immediately before Hebrew, so that's straightening out the HF indeterminate block. It's telling us it's actually going to be FH. And the Hebrew award is presented immediately before the Korean award. Hebrew immediately before Korean, so it's going to go FH, and now they're telling us the H is immediately before Korean, so it would go FHKL. But what about the G and the S? We still don't know where those guys are going to go, so B can't be the answer because things are not completely determined. C says the French award is presented immediately before the Latin award is presented, so that's pretty good. It tells us the French award is going to be immediately before Latin, so it would have to go HFLK. So in one piece of information, they straightened out both of the indeterminate blocks, right? HFLK, and then they say the Korean award is presented immediately before Japanese. So we go HFLKJ. So they've given us HFLKJ, but the question is, what about G and S? We still don't know where those guys are going to go. And so because they haven't straightened out the G and the S, that can't be the answer either. So hopefully one of these last two is going to straighten everything out for us. D says the German award is presented immediately before the French award is presented. Okay, so we have GFH, right? GFH. And the Latin award is presented immediately before the Japanese award. So we have GFH and then KLJ, because in order for Latin to come immediately before Japanese, it would have to go KLJ. So we have GFH, KLJ. All right, this looks promising. Now, let's just write it down for a second. So it's going to be G, actually, let me write it up here. G, F, H, and that's a block, okay? And then the Latin award, so then we have L, the Latin award is presented immediately, sorry. We have K, L, J, okay? And these are blocks, so let's put them in blocks. Okay, and now you're probably saying to me, well, what about the S though? We don't know, because we know that this block is going to come before that block, right? It has to because of the rules. But you might be saying, well, what about the S? They haven't straightened out the S. And they didn't directly mention the S, but if they give us this information the way they've given it to us, we actually know about the S. And the reason is because if we just had these 6 people, the G looks like it's coming first, but that's impossible. The G can't come first. So we need to put somebody in front of the G in order to make this obey the rules. The only person we have left is the S. So now we know that should be bigger. Let's just do it at the same time. So now we know that this is going to be the order because we needed to put somebody before the G. The only person available to go before the G was S. So then we know that the S had to be first. So the order is going to be S in 1, G in 2, F in 3, H in 4, and so on. Hopefully this makes sense to you. This is not that easy of a question. The right way to approach it is to think for a second ahead of time about what the moving parts are that you would need to straighten out, and then to keep those moving parts in mind as you go through the answer choices, and then to pay attention to which of the answer choices straighten all of those things out. Sometimes it may, and like in this case, it may not straighten them out directly. This one straightened everything out except for one directly. It didn't straighten out the placement of the S, but then when we thought about it for a second, we realized, yeah, actually they did place the S because the G can't be first, so the S would have to go before the G, S would have to be first, and everybody else goes in the order indicated, 1 through 7. All right? So this game, I would say, it's not a difficult game, but it's moderately difficult, and the reason is because some people would not put this line together, okay? And then this last question, I think a lot of people would miss it, especially if they were running short on time. They might not go through the question as methodically as they should, and so they may get tricked up somewhere tripped up or tricked up, whatever you want to call it, somewhere along the way. All right. So that's it for this game.